Hi, this is John, the Rosen Head, a Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post for Tisha B'Av, we're going to try to discuss and see how this year we can approach Tisha B'Av with perhaps a different perspective in a way that could prepare us to really use this Tisha B'Av to make it into a day where we turn the suffering and the mourning into celebration in a way preparing ourselves, hopefully, with these coming days to be ready for the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, because ultimately that's what we're hoping for Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av instills within us over the years in our history is a day of mourning and suffering. But it's also, every time the year comes around, this time of the year comes around, it starts to awaken again the sparks of a yearning and a desire to experience again the Beis Hamikdash. So we have this dialectical experience of loss and mourning, suffering and sadness, also with hope, strength and belief that it will turn into a day of celebration. It will turn into a chag. But we've suffered for so many years, and it can't be that only once a year we start to experience and feel these sparks. It can't be that we wait just till Tisha B'Av to reconnect and attach ourselves to what life really means, a life of meaning, of purpose, of a connection with the Beis Hamikdash and with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It can't be that we only wait just to this year. So why just to this day? And I'm not speaking for everyone, but in general, I think it's fair to say that there is this sense that we go through the year, and Tisha B'Av has this feeling and this strength because it's one day in the calendar. It's okay in a way to feel this pain and suffering once a year. But for the rest of the year, and for year after year, for thousands of years now, we go through this cycle of forgetting almost, forgetting what we are trying to build, what we are trying to reconnect with. That we have a day of Tisha B'Av, which is a day of mourning and suffering, a day of loss, where we sit in Avelut. In a sense, we are suffering and we are mourning the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. But we're mourning more than that. The loss is greater than that. But the reason, perhaps we could explain this ongoing thousands of years where we return this cycle of Tisha B'Av after Tisha B'Av after Tisha B'Av, is because the loss and the mourning is actually ambiguous. We're talking about an ambiguous loss. What I mean by that is that from a psychological perspective, there's a idea of ambiguous loss, which was coined by Dr. Pauline Boss, saying that ambiguous loss is a loss, is a mourning, a suffering that lacks clarity, that in a way is unresolved. And there can be different reasons for this, but it leads a person to grapple with and struggle with this unresolved, a loss that lacks closure. So one example is where, for example, there's a loved one is still alive. They haven't passed away, they haven't died, but there is in a sense, there is a psychological loss, a psychological disconnect. This happens in a case of, unfortunately, when there's neurological damage or illness, for Alzheimer's or dementia, where the person is still living physically, they still exist, they're still in the world and living, but psychologically there's a disconnect and they're lost. And for loved ones, for family members, this places them in a very difficult situation of ambiguous loss. It lacks clarity, it's unresolved, there is no closure because the person physically still exists, but the person that they knew, the loved one, that they had a relationship with, in a sense has been lost. And this is the ambiguous loss. One example that Dr. Pauline Boss talks about, and a person enters into this ongoing state of trying to understand and trying to make sense and trying to process this ambiguous loss. And if we look at the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, that's something which is concrete in a way that we are able to find closure with that. It's a tangible loss that we can try to understand and we can actually connect with, because it's something that it's physical, it's a structure, it's something which is tangible that we no longer have. And that's that can actually make sense to us. But the ambiguous loss, which is perhaps why there's been this ongoing process and complication of trying to grapple with this suffering and with this mourning, is the ambiguous loss of the Jewish unity, of the national unity. The sinat chinam that the Gemara tells us in Yuma, that led to the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, is the sense that the Jewish people were no longer connected with each other. The unity that is so integral and fundamental to the Jewish existence and the way that we function as a people is lost. But we can say this is the ambiguous loss, because as a nation we still exist. We continue to overcome tragedy after tragedy, suffering after suffering throughout the generations. We still exist. The Jewish people is still here. We are still in existence. The body is still there of the Jewish people. But from a psychological, mental health perspective, we are disconnected. We are lost. And this, in a way, it relates to the idea of ambiguous loss that we need to try to come to terms with. We need to try to recognize and acknowledge. But we are not looking, unlike other perhaps ambiguous loss of coming to terms with the loss, we don't need to come to terms with it. We don't need to accept it, but rather we need to acknowledge it and fight to reawaken and to actually return the state of the Jewish unity to its full health, to its full mental health. That we need to acknowledge this process of ambiguous loss that we are engaged in throughout thousands of years, and which contributes towards this ongoing process of Tisha B'Av after Tisha B'Av, year after year. But we need to understand that this is an ongoing, day after day, process of ambiguous loss of the Jewish people that we as a nation are engaged with. We need to process it. We need to go through a process, a therapeutic process on a national level, to reawaken and to reconnect and to find the achdut, to find the unity that we have lost. And once again, then we can come back to this to be in a state where we are ready for the rebuilding of the tangible Beis Hamikdash, but we are ready as a nation to be connected again and to be able to be a united unit in the times of the Mashiach, and to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to be the Jewish people and the united, strong Jewish people and connected Jewish people that we are meant to be, and that will only come when we're able to process the ambiguous loss. I wish you a good Shabbos, and we should see very soon the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash.